So, Phil, at the local Walmart down the road, there's a lamp, and the beans are literally green through October, November almost, before they decide to harvest them. Why is that?
That's a crazy phenomenon, actually. Yeah, so that's related to this fact of basically night length. So you can do it in a greenhouse really easy, but actually it only takes about 30 seconds of flipping the light switch on in darkness to keep soybeans in a vegetative state. So it's like they just keep going, and it's kind of like rinse, lather, repeat. It's just, it can't get past that. So as long as the light is on all the time, and you see this with night, lamps above around soybean fields, they never mature. So an indeterminate soybean, it needs a certain amount of night length to make that switch. So it makes that switch at the summer solstice as the nights get shorter. But if you flip a light switch on, like I said, even 30 seconds in the middle of the night, it's going to keep it in vegetative state, and it's going to be green until it gets frosty.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, because you'll drive down the road and see a lot of lamps and a lot of green soybeans.
Yep. Combine chews them up.
Yes, it does. Hi, I'm Ashley, Seed and Seed Treatment Manager here with Liqui-Grow.
And I'm Phil Long, Regional Agronomist here with Liqui-Grow.
Well, Phil, we were just talking about GDUs in corn earlier today, and the conversation got brought up about GDUs in soybeans. And is it important?
That's a great question. So, GDUs with soybeans a lot of times gets misunderstood, I think, because it is important. And I think when people really started to understand this, I'm going to go back memory lane a little bit here, was in 2012 in the drought year.
Yes.
So even out here in Iowa, I was in Indiana at the time, but a lot of people planted soybeans extremely early, like March. And what happened? Well, they were flowering in May. So people were like, what is going on? It's strange to see them flowering, because we all think soybeans, they're day length determinate. The summer solstice, June 25th, and that's when they should start to turn that corner into reproduction. Well, actually, up front in vegetative stages, soybeans rely on GDUs or heat units. They're influenced about 2/3 by heat units and only 1/3 by day length. And I'm going to adjust that a little bit. It's actually night length. So GDUs and night length. When they get to flowering, then it's actually the opposite. So they're influenced 2/3 by the night length and only 1/3 by the heat units.
Okay.
So
earlier in the season, they are affected by GDUs. After reproduction, they are affected less by the GDUs.
Exactly. So that's like I was just talking about the drought year. That's how we ended up flowering so early, because they had the heat. They were like, okay, we should be flowering because we had plenty of heat. It was that's why people planted, but we had plenty of heat to get them to reproduction, even though the night length was not adjusted accordingly in their minds. So, and then on the backside of this is another interesting concept I hear a lot in terms of changing your maturities. So you deal with this quite a bit too, but once we get to June, everybody's like, oh, I need to change my maturity. In corn, it's a little different. But in soybeans, that end of the season is dependent more so on night length. So they're going to mature based on night length more so than heat. So what happens, you plant one in early May and then early June, they're actually only about a week apart at the end of the season. So that's always mind-boggling to people, but that's how they, physiologically, how they mature.
So the old wives' tale of, if you plant later, stick with your later bean, or plant a later bean, is really true when you're talking about GDUs and how many heat units they need to hit reproductive stage.
Yeah, and you can, there's a lot of, people do double crop soybeans in some areas too, and that's where their discussion with whether to shorten maturity or stay with full season. And in general, I'd say typically most people see more success with full season. And honestly, that gets into the node production and stuff. It allows more time to push node production, because as the days get shorter, you get closer to summer solstice, it wants to get to reproduction. But if you have a longer maturity bean, it forces it to stay in that vegetative state and putting on more nodes. So this is obviously indeterminate soybeans. We grow indeterminate. You go down south, they grow determinate. That's totally different. We're not talking about that. But as far as indeterminate soybeans go, GDUs are very important up front, and understanding that helps you plan a little bit more for high-yielding soybeans.
Great. Well, that's great to know, Phil. Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to another session with you.
Stay in the know with Liqui-Grow.